Being a principal is not only just about managing buildings, observing teachers, leading meetings, and improving student outcome. Although improving student outcome is one of the biggest priorities, there's so much more to being a campus leader. In this presentation, I'll be using 4 reference points. Chapter 3 in the book Breakthrough Principles by Jean Desravine, Jamie Aquino, and Benjamin Fenton. Another is from the Toolkit 3.9, which is from the same book. This is basically a reflection of questions for identifying data sources and assessments, plus the principal standards 2 and 3, which relates to human capital and executive leadership. And last, I'll be using the case study by the Matthews and Knight titled Denying Special Educations to Students in Need. All of these will be related to and tied into my professional practice as a future principal. Although these 4 readings focused on different topics, they all emphasize 4 important responsibilities of effective principals. Leading instruction, using data to make decisions, developing teachers, and advocating for students. These responsibilities are interconnected. Look at it like this. Strong instruction improves student learning. Data helps identify student and campus needs, while teacher development improves classroom practice for our teachers. And then you have student advocacy that ensures that all students receive the support they need in order to succeed. So basically, it's all about helping students to reach success. And as I speak of these 4 ideas, I will tie in each of these readings as examples and support. Chapter 3 of the book Principal Breakthrough argues that instructional leadership is the most important responsibility of a principal. And 4 concepts stood out to me in this chapter. The first one is curriculum alignment. The problem here is that in many schools, 2 students in the same grade can have completely different learning experiences. Let's say teacher A teaches the standards in depth, uses high-level questionings, and provides meaningful feedback, while teacher B stays at the basic recall level, has lower expectations, and rarely checks for understanding. Unfortunately, these students receive unequal learning opportunities even though they're in the same grade level at the same school. So curriculum alignment creates that coherence across grade levels and reduces instructional gaps. Also, I noticed that high expectations was repeatedly stressed in this chapter. This looked like teachers and principals believing that students can learn and grow. Even bigger than this, principals believing and entrusting that teachers can engage and teach the students. High expectations require educators to focus on students' potential rather than their limitations. Rigorous instruction. This does not mean making work harder. This is a common misconception. Instead, rigor means deep thinking, problem solving, analysis, and justification of answers. And last, we have consistency across classrooms. This is probably one of the most important leadership points. Chapter 3 argues that students should not have to depend on getting the good teacher to receive quality instruction. Instead, expectations should be consistent, as well as instructional routines and curriculum implementation. Not identical, but definitely consistent. Teachers can have different personalities and teaching styles while still maintaining common instructional practices. So how does this relate to my professional practice as a future principal? This connected strongly to my work as a coach and reading interventionist. I have observed how inconsistent instructional practices can create learning gaps. And as a future principal, I want to create systems that ensure all students have access to rigorous and aligned instruction. So let's talk about Toolkit 3.9 from Despravine's book. This toolkit focuses on how principals use assessment data to improve instruction. It also encourages leaders to ask important questions about things like assessment alignment, data analysis, progress monitoring, and instructional alignment. The overall concept that stood out to me was that data should not simply be collected for compliance, but it should also lead to action, like real action. As this relates to my professional practice as a future principal, I want my teachers to view data as a tool for improving learning rather than simply a compliance requirement. On to the Texas Principal Standards. So Standard 2 focuses on human capital, which means developing and supporting great teachers so that every student has access to excellent teaching. This standard emphasizes coaching, feedback, professional learning, and continuous teacher growth. I mean, it makes sense because a principal cannot personally teach every student. Instead, she's going to have to improve student achievement by things like recruiting strong teachers, retaining effective teachers, and coaching and developing her teachers. Focus is not just on hiring good people, but also retaining the ones you already have and helping them to grow. It's an investment. And how does this relate to my professional practice as a future principal? Well, Texas Principal Standard 2 resonates strongly with my professional experience because much of my career has focused on coaching teachers and supporting instructional improvement. As a coach, I worked alongside teachers to analyze student data, plan instruction, and implement evidence-based literacy practices. Not only this, but making the connection to Chapter 3 as well. I want to go ahead and talk about how Chapter 3 connects with Standard 2 because Chapter 3, it reinforced the idea that improving student achievement requires developing teacher capacity, which is exactly what Standard 2 does. And as a future principal, I want to create systems of support that help teachers grow professionally so that all students receive high quality instruction. Texas Principal Standard 3 focuses on leadership, culture, communication, and most importantly, ethical decision making. Standard 3 connects directly to the case study by the Matthews and Knight. And this case study examined a school where accountability pressures influenced negative decisions as it related to students in need of special education services. One lesson I learned from the case study was that principals must build trust with families and students and staff. For example, in the study, several parents expressed concerns that their children were struggling academically and behaviorally, yet the school repeatedly delayed or resisted referrals for special education evaluation. In this case, trust was weakened when families believed the school was not responding appropriately to concerns about their children's needs. Principals must build trust through transparency, communication, and a commitment to putting students first. Another lesson I learned was principals must make ethical decisions. An example from the case was when school leaders and staff were under pressure to maintain accountability ratings and avoid increasing special education. As a result, some students who should have qualified for services did not. Ethical leadership requires principals to make decisions based on student needs when those decisions can be helpful. And a powerful lesson I learned was that principals must ensure equity. Every student deserves access to services and support necessary for their success, period. This study reminded me that future principals must have the courage to advocate for students. Leadership is not simply about compliance and or accountability. It is doing what's right for students.